Thank you for watching Avid Retro. Today I have a unboxing for you. This is quite special. This is an unboxing of a old telephone system, a mobile telephone system, somewhat. There's a caveat to that. I'll tell you about that as I go through this. And it was called a Rabbit, and it was available fairly widely in the UK in the early 90s, and unfortunately it didn't actually hang around too long, and I'll explain why it didn't. The system itself was developed in the late 80s, so around 1989 the development of this was being done, but the actual rollout didn't happen until a little bit later after lots of testing. So the rollout was in 92 to 94. So join me as I go through and unbox this telephone system. Now I like to spend a little bit of time looking at the box because the box is quite well featured in its blurb and its writings on the side. So as you can see, this is a Rabbit telephone system. This is called Rabbit Plus, and I believe that's only because it comes with everything. It's not just a handset. So I'll explain how this can be used. It can be used, as they say, at home or out and about. And on the side it says that the Rabbit system offers tomorrow's technology today, operating with any common air interface system in the UK and Europe. Various combinations of Rabbit equipment and services are available to you. The store where you buy your Rabbit will advise you on the combination most suited to your lifestyle and needs. Once you've selected your Rabbit equipment and signed your Rabbit service agreement, you will receive your starter pack, including a video to help you to get the most from the Rabbit system. You can then immediately benefit from the ultimate in portability, flexibility and convenience, making calls with your Rabbit cordless telephone from anywhere in a range of a Rabbit sign, at the shops, in the motorway service area or the railway station, for example. Then it goes to say Rabbit in the home or office. Use in conjunction with the Rabbit private base station, which connects to your existing telephone line. Your Rabbit cordless telephone allows you complete freedom to make or receive calls from anywhere you like within a wide radius, in the garden, in the garage, in the bath, or working from your home, in your office, in another department, or outside in the office car park. So you will never miss another call. So does that mean it's got a 100-meter radius? Quite possibly. Up to 9 Rabbit phones can be assigned to one private base station, so everyone can have their own. Although, as with conventional systems, only one call can be made at a time. It's because you've only got one telephone line going out. And thanks to the very latest digital technology, you'll enjoy crystal clarity and total security with every call, and none of the interference associated with other types of analog cordless telephones. So quite a nice, a nice expensive kind of handset in that it can work digitally. So that means that I guess it was probably a little bit harder to crack than the analog phones that were also available around the time. Rabbit always in touch. The Rabbit message alert gives you constant access to your personal messaging service, keeping you in touch every time, everywhere. The discreet message alert can be clipped on or carried in your pocket whenever you go, so you can be alerted when a message is waiting. To hear your message, you simply call your personal number and respond to it using the Rabbit system when you choose. And then it says available in Rabbit Recall and Rabbit Recall Plus packages. I'm going to have a cordless telephone, a Rabbit Park and Charge unit, and a Rabbit private base station. It's a very sunny day out there today, and I've come back indoors and I'm a little bit snivelly, so I'm figuring it's probably not a cold, but it's hay fever kicking in. Tend to get it slightly, not too much, but it must be very high today out there, the pollen count. Anyway, let's move on. So this video I'm recording now is obviously recent, it's 2025, but we're looking now at something that is very old. When I say old, we're looking at 30 to 40 years old. Some manuals here, quite nice. Tell me all about setting up. quite a few pages, but anyway, there's one about the handset and one about the base station. So we've got some receipts and things. Let's have a little look. And this receipt is 1997. So that's quite late. He was still using it in 1997. It says Rabbit batteries AA, sold in pairs only. And it was £11 with the VAT at the time. That's when VAT was 17.5%, not 20% like it is now. Tech Logic Repair, sales sheet, and postal repair. Okay, nothing else there, I don't think. Should we go for this little one first? Or is that just... Oh, I don't know what that is actually. I might have found a battery. There is a battery there. Okay. Let's go for one of these. So it says handset for the cordless telephone. And there it is. Remarkably tidy. They didn't have aerials that popped up, did they? There's the battery compartment. Very, very 80s, 90s kind of retro looking, isn't it? Line hold, icon, lock select clear, store in memory, I think, ring recall, PSE tone, and another menu. Is that to do with the volume on that side? Yeah, probably M for mute maybe. You can charge from the bottom. Anything else come in that box? I don't think so. So we've got a park and charge unit. And that's what this is. It's wedged in quite well. And there's a wall mounting template. Could have this on the wall. So it does seem I've got the original screws for mounting it on the wall, and I've got a mains charger here, so it's 7.5 AC output. And there it is, the Rabbit park and charge. Very straightforward, nice chunky design, a metal kind of base plate in there to keep it in one place, which is nice. Just looking in the rest of the box, I've got a little credit card help guide. That's nice. That's the Rabbit handset. Making a call, ending a call, clearing an error, locking, unlocking the keypad, the 4-digit lock code. The last bit of paperwork. So I've got a handset serial number. Which obviously makes it unique. this looks to be a receipt. And it says £99, yeah, so it's £99. It was bought in 1994, February 1994, for £100. So a little bit more in today's money. Setting up their cardboard. It's actually in pretty amazing condition. This is the base kind of unit. Just seeing what that is. Might have a go at opening that up just to see what it might be. So the rubber aerial looks to be intact. Only one button on the base unit. It says page, so that's to find out where your handset is. Oh, and there's one underneath, reg, so that must be registering it against the handset. So more ways to connect it to the wall, I guess, like a bracket and some screws. I don't think there's anything else in there. What's interesting is I've only got one battery. This is a NiCad, and you would have had two of these. What makes this one a little bit more interesting though than a regular kind of battery is the negative. So it looks like it's got like a pin on there. That's basically to tell the handset to charge the battery. I'll just show you why. What you can see is this will take standard AA batteries, so standard kind of alkaline batteries, and you might want to obviously put that back into the cradle and not have it charge, because obviously who wants to blow up alkaline batteries? Not too many people. But this enables this handset to know that a rechargeable NiCad battery has been inserted. And just to prove it, let's put it in. So negative is at that end, positive is this end. It just goes to the charging circuit. So the negative does touch the same place as the negative on a standard battery would, but at the same time there's a bit that goes to a back metal contact, which is the charging circuit. So for that to stand any chance of working, I would need another battery, and I think, unless I've got one on the floor, I think I've only got one. But it's quite cool to see what the original battery would have looked like. So the contacts are a little bit corroded there, but not too bad. These got developed by a company which Hutchinson kind of took over, and many of you will realise that Hutchinson is the name behind the Orange brand, so pre kind of Orange mobile phone network in the UK. The idea for these actual Rabbit phones was that you could make calls out when you were out and about in town centres and urban areas. You might often see the Rabbit logo, and I remember seeing it in just a few places. In Poole in Parkstone, I remember seeing this logo kind of mounted by the side of the shop. like a newsagent, for example. So that would mean that if you had one of these and it was all working at the time, then you could make telephone calls. Unfortunately though, there would be a limit to how many telephone calls could be made, and that's because the connecting kind of station at the newsagent or shop would only have availability for 2 lines. It was basically a one-way system when you were out and about. You couldn't receive calls on this. You could at home, but when you're out and about, you could only make calls. So the idea was that you would make a call, and I guess the receiver was just plugged in to a standard BT phone point, and that's how it kind of worked. So the reasons why this didn't really take off was that it was, I guess, slow to market in the first place. It was a great sort of concept though, because at the time there was nothing affordable like it. So to have something like this that you could go out in an urban setting and make a couple of calls outward to back home perhaps, was quite a novelty really. And it kind of piggybacked on the old system as well, didn't it? Because the receivers for these handsets while you were out and about were just plugged into traditional telephone lines. So they were easy to sight, an incentive for the retailers to actually have one of these in their shop. So they would have been paid a commission or maybe a percentage. It'd be quite nice to find out actually what the scheme was like, but it was relatively short-lived, lasting only a couple of years from 1992 to 1994. And the reason why is because at that time there was a lot of competition in the telecoms arena, and BT sort of Soundnet developing the analog mobile phone system. So that analog telephone system, which kind of preceded the telephones that we all know about now, they went to digital, so they went to 2G, and then obviously 3G, 4G, 5G, etc. That earlier mobile phone generation that allowed you to make analog based calls, that was really a killer for this, because they had it rolled out in lots more places. This was really constrained to, as they said, to motorway services. I think Manchester had a big range of these in the city centre, but obviously if you had this on you as you were walking about, I mean, it was quite a lump to carry, wasn't it? So you'd really kind of wanted to know that where you were going had coverage, I guess. Otherwise, what was the point in kind of having to carry that big block with you? What is interesting though is the icon. As you can see, it's a rabbit with 2 ears, but in fact it's a back to front R. So the design of this was done by a man, I believe, who studied the Russian alphabet and came up with the idea to have an emblem like that and to have an icon like this. So quite a nice icon, and I think there was some trademark kind of issues where they didn't want to sell this as part of the actual system, to kind of keep rights to this logo and everything. So I think that was a bit of a concern for Hutchinson. This will work in 2025 for as long as the analog service is still available in your home. Now they are rolling out digital only, which means that to make telephone calls it's going to basically be done via Wi-Fi and your internet. So if you haven't got a router, internet router, even if you don't use the internet, then you won't be able to make calls on the old telephone network for much longer. There will be adapters available that allow you to plug in handsets like this to your router, and in theory you should still be able to use something like this for a little bit longer, but it kind of becomes dependent on having your Wi-Fi. And if your internet goes down, if someone's digging the road up or installing new lines and things, apart from maybe not being able to work from home, for example, you might also not be able to make any quick phone calls out. So that's the way we're tempted to be going. Right, I'll just put some batteries in. Will this do anything? And will the batteries I've put in, ooh, it's waking up. I was going to say, will they work? But you can see, oh, listen. Yeah, it's just making a very low kind of noise because it can't find the base station. I seem only to have one adapter, so that's something I am missing. I've got the adapter for the charging part, but not for the actual base. So what is the spec for that? It doesn't say. Now it does mention that it needs the power supply to operate, and from initial inspection I can't tell if I can just swap the one over that I've got for the handset charger. So rather than risk doing that and breaking this, I did have a read about this, and basically it takes a little 9-volt battery, and it's basically called a backup system. So if you have a power cut, you've still got about half an hour talk time on a 9-volt battery if it's installed. So that's quite interesting, and there's a little bit of redundancy kind of built in there, isn't there? So let's pop that off, like so. And indeed, there is room for a battery, but there's also some dip switches in here, and this is all to do with the type of system that it is. So I'm not going to touch those at the moment because I presume it's probably set up to work anyway. But we can find out. Now we need some heavy lifting here, so I thought I'd use a JCB battery. You can't go wrong with a JCB battery. Leave that off for a minute. See if this registers. It says it's in use. I've pressed line on here. Where's that nice bit of information? Here it is. Ah, okay, so let's put that number in again. And as expected, it's not going to do anything. So I've parked myself by the door now. As you can see, I've got this plugged straight in. Let's make a call. Yay! As soon as I answer, it goes call ended. So not quite sure why that is. It could be because this hasn't got the mains adapter, and the battery I've put in there is a used battery, so it might not have too much life on it. But it does show that putting a number in here does come through on your phone. Well, I think that's a partial result today. I'm definitely going to research the adapter I need and whether or not I can use the same adapter on the base station. But I think that would be a nice bit of retro kit to kind of have here. But apart from that, quite an interesting and sturdy relic of the past. A little bit disappointed it hasn't got one of those flip out aerials. That would have been quite nice, and I don't think it had a lit display, did it? Let me just see if it did. I don't think it did. No. But a nice kind of display, and as we mentioned before, it would charge the batteries if you had NiCads in there. But as many will be aware now, particularly in Europe, they're basically stopping NiCads unless it's for particular devices. So yeah, I think on the normal kind of market for buying batteries, they are becoming a lot more expensive, a lot harder to source. Will that one work at all? Who knows? I mean, it's not been touching the insides of this, it's been loose in a box, so potentially there might be something to it, but I know it looks like it's a little bit decayed underneath the plastic there. So that's quite an interesting way of going about doing this, isn't it? The charging part. I've got other NiCads that worked in a CD Walkman that had a charging facility built in, but what they did is they tended to have a bit of metal that just touched the side, because obviously negative is the whole kind of outside of the battery as well. That's how they kind of knew it was charging a NiCad. The CD Walkman was charging a NiCad, but on this particular battery it's got a dedicated sort of bit that's been soldered on there, fabricated for the bottom there. This would have probably made these more expensive to source as well. Well, I think they did, didn't they? Because I had that receipt which said that these were quite expensive. I think that sums up Rabbit for now. Please like and subscribe, and please, as always, add some comments about your experience with this. Do you know offhand what this takes in terms of power? Normally it's written on, isn't it? But this one unfortunately isn't, so might have to take that apart somewhat. But anyway, nice to see something in its original sort of box and materials.